Good Sunday morning. This is the Georgia Gang. I'm Russ Spencer in for Lori Geary. As coronavirus cases surge across the South and West, two of Georgia's top leaders butt heads over whether masks should be mandatory and who's in charge. President Trump says it's time to get children back in the classroom. Some school leaders here in Georgia say not so fast. And four former bosses at Atlanta's CDC accuse political leaders of undermining the world's preeminent public health agency. The gang is all here with former Democratic congressional candidate Bobby Capel in for Theron. Let's get started.
From the Fox 5 studios, the Georgia Gang starts now.
Governor Kemp put his foot down this week twice, issuing an executive order emphasizing his right to stop cities and counties from creating their own coronavirus rules, and then filing a lawsuit against Atlanta Mayor Bottoms over her mask mandate, one of more than a dozen statewide. Mayor Bottoms is not swayed.
It's a simple thing to do. It's an easy thing to do. We will just continue to push and ask people to do it despite the disagreements that we may have.
Mayor Bottoms took the drastic step of rolling back Atlanta's reopening to phase 1 in response to the spike in coronavirus cases, asking people to stay home except for essential travel, no large gatherings, and asking restaurants to close their dining areas again, delivery and pickup only. On Thursday night, Governor Kemp raised the stakes in a lawsuit against the mayor, saying, just like sending in the Georgia National Guard to protect those living in our capital city from crime and violence, I refuse to sit back and watch as disastrous policies threaten the lives and livelihoods of our citizens. We will fight to stop these reckless actions and put people over pandemic politics. The governor explained his reasoning in a Friday morning news conference.
So to add another mandate that's not going to be enforced in communities that haven't enforced other orders, in my opinion, is a failed policy. And we shouldn't have to ask people to do the right thing.
Whatever the motivation is, I think that at the end of the day, we all have to do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. And what the scientists are telling us is that the right thing to do is to wear a mask.
School leaders in some of the state's largest districts say they too are listening to the scientists and going virtual. Fulton and Cobb counties had considered letting parents choose between online and in-person learning until the case numbers and hospitalizations turned in the wrong direction and kept climbing. All right, let's bring in the panel now. Kathy Willard, Janelle King, Phil Kent, and Democratic strategist Bobby Capel, who's in for Theron Johnson today. Governor Kemp has been setting a good personal example by wearing a mask in public, but he says making it mandatory is unenforceable and that it's his call. Anyway, a mixed message or realistic? Bobby, you're the guest. We'll let you go first.
Hey, Russ. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, look, I think this is exactly what you get when you have the divisive nature of what's coming out of the president's mouth in Washington. It has now infected the state levels, putting a pandemic into a political storm. Basically, he has decided to inject masks as a political problem for Republicans. You're not allowed to wear a mask if you're a Republican. If you're a Democrat, it's okay. This whole thing has gotten so out of control that you now have cities like Atlanta who are just trying to do what Brian Kemp acknowledges is the right thing, which is have people wear masks. Every scientist in the country agrees on this, and yet somehow, some way, he decided that it's a good use of taxpayer money here in Georgia, your and my money, to sue the city of Atlanta to prevent people from doing what he calls the right thing. I just can't even understand why he would do this. He's going to be up for re-election himself on the ballot in 2022, and this has a systemic effect. When you don't have people wearing masks, the economy starts to shut down. You have schools shutting down, just like they are, again, for several of the school districts here in Atlanta, Fulton, Cobb. And then you have stay-at-home parents, or parents who normally wouldn't be stay-at-home, having to stay home and teach their children and deal with not only running companies or doing their job, and that impacts the economy, which then comes back and reflects on Brian Kemp. So I just don't understand why he would want to do this, even for himself, much less for the state.
Right. Janelle, what's your take?
Oh my goodness, this is so interesting. So first of all, the lawsuit is not about mandating masks. If that was the case, he would have filed a lawsuit against the other cities as well. It's about the fact that a part of this mandating of masks is also a rollback into phase one, which is impacting businesses. So we're talking about businesses who had already had shut down for a few months, and then they were finally starting to rebuild, and now they have to go backwards. And for what? For 3,441 new cases in a whole entire state that has 10 million people, 10 million residents. And I'm not by any means making light of the actual situation, but we have to look at this from a realistic perspective. And what I did was I kind of broke it down in increments of 10 days. So between July 6th and July 16th, we saw an increase of 1,893 new cases. That's about 189 new cases they were seeing per day in a 10-day span out of an average of 14,000 tests per day. That is a very small percentage. So do I think we're at the point where everyone needs to wear a mask? Of course, everyone is telling you to wear a mask. That's a personal responsibility that you have to take, but it's not enforceable, so it's not a policy. And then on top of all of that, at the end of the day, this is about businesses and about making decisions based off of realistic data.
All right, Kathy, how damaging is it to a unified response by the state that the governor and the mayor are so at odds over this?
I think it's really damaging. I think people are looking for leadership. They're looking for consistency. I think anyone, I hesitate to say it, but anyone in their right mind knows they should be wearing a mask when they go out in public. But when we hear this sort of divisive language in this fight, it translates into something else. You know, last Wednesday, 84% of the ICU beds in the state of Georgia were full. I dare say today, as you're watching this, that we're probably getting very close to 100%. We have to back that number down. We just can't have our ICUs full. We can't have, you know, bodies in body bags out in trailers and parking lots that we've seen in other states. And we've just got to get control of this. You know, in terms of the testing this week, 15% of the people testing are testing positive. That's a really, really high number. You could kind of see it in the Dr. Toomey's response today on Friday. So I think it's really unhelpful. It's a waste of money. There's so many things we should spend money and time on. And I do think, again, as the highest officer, elected official in the state of Georgia, the governor has some responsibility to pull people together and come up with a plan that everybody can get behind.
Yeah. Phil, I'm interested in your take on this, but I also want to hear what you think about the school situation. Some of Georgia's largest school districts considered giving parents a choice between virtual and in-school instruction this fall. Fulton and Cobb counties in Atlanta have been swayed by rising case numbers to take the safer virtual course. What's your take on all this?
To my colleagues, Kathy and Bobby, I mean, the hysterical attacks by Bobby on Donald Trump are ridiculous. You know, what the president and what Governor Kemp are trying to do is to have a balance between public safety and health and to reopen the economy and to make sure jobs are there for people and businesses can stay open. And I think we can't forget that. And secondly, all this business about, oh, this is divisive by Governor Kemp. No, that's why you have two political parties and differing political philosophies. You're going to have divisiveness. That's what this country and its political system is all about. So let's take that away from the equation. I would say one last thing. Mayor Bottoms in Atlanta has an obligation to enforce the current guidelines. I mean, you can drive around and you can see that there are kids hanging all over one another at some of these bars, and the Atlanta police aren't enforcing specific guidelines right now in Atlanta. And here she has the gall to be attacking Governor Kemp. He's done the right thing. He's trying to balance reopening and jobs and saving jobs. I thought the Democrats were for the workers. They're obviously not. Governor Kemp certainly is. And Russ, to your point on the schools, I said this last week, and the American Pediatric Association has been saying this. Let's get the kids back to school this fall if we can with proper safety protocols. I'm glad to see, for example, in Gwinnett County, we're trying to get in-person learning. In a lot of cases, if you can do it, let's do it. If you can't, let's take some remedial action. For example, we've had flu season every year and we've dealt with it. Let's try to deal with it here now. Now, we may have to have smaller classroom sizes. If that can happen, that's great. Again, these kids, K through 12, are at very, very low risk. And we have to remember that while still keeping to the current safety protocols.
Well, that's fair enough, but their teachers, certainly some of them are at risk, and parents and grandparents as well. We'll talk more about it coming up, and Bobby will give you a chance to rebut because Phil did invoke your name. But coming up on the program, 4 former directors of the CDC say the agency's coronavirus response is being hamstrung by politics. We'll be right back.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Email them at georgiagang@foxtv.com.
4 former CDC directors accused the Trump administration of undermining the agency, reacting in part to President Trump's criticism of school reopening guidelines. In an op-ed in the Washington Post, they wrote, as the debate last week around reopening schools more safely showed, these repeated efforts to subvert sound public health guidelines introduce chaos and uncertainty while unnecessarily putting lives at risk. Well, let's get the panel back in here. Janelle, is the president, is the administration playing politics with the coronavirus?
Well, I think that these former CDC directors are playing politics, if you ask me, because to write an op-ed about this is politicizing it within itself. But I don't think that's the case. I think what the president is doing is trying to represent all angles. Obviously, we are paying attention to data, definitely paying attention to science, but you have to figure out that there are other aspects to this as well, and that's what a leader is supposed to do. So I just think that he's just simply doing his job.
Bobby, what's your reaction to what's going on at the CDC? It certainly does seem to have been sidelined to some extent.
It certainly does, and I think it goes to the point that Phil and I were discussing in the prior break, which was Phil saying that with respect, there is no division coming out of this White House. Well, when you have the President of the United States saying, if you wear a mask, that is a political statement against me, I don't think there's anything that could be more divisive, except for maybe having your own campaign team do a opposition research dump on the lead doctor that you put in charge of dealing with this pandemic. And I think it just continues on down with the CDC. There does not need to be so much division. Everybody wants their kids to go to school. You think anybody likes wearing a mask? Nobody likes it. It's hot. No one enjoys doing it. But it is something we are doing to try and protect the folks who need protecting. A lot of people who have little children live with their grandparents. When they bring something home from the school, they can be a silent carrier, give it to the grandparent, and it could be a real problem for that grandparent. You know, you have to balance those things with the economy, of course, and schooling. And I think everybody needs to just get on board together, work together, and try and figure out something that we can all agree on going forward.
Yeah, you mentioned Dr. Fauci. White House Trade Advisor Peter Navarro told CBS News that Dr. Fauci has been wrong about everything I've interacted with him on, and that he only follows Dr. Fauci's advice with caution. Phil, you know, is this a good idea to take on Dr. Fauci, who's one of the more trusted people according to the polls?
You know, again, I have to laugh. This country is based on healthy debate, and people are going to disagree in this divisiveness business. And by the way, Bobby distorted exactly what Donald Trump was saying. He never said, if you're wearing a mask, you're against me. It's a total distortion. In fact, Bobby, why don't you look at recent news clips? You've got the First Lady Melania, and you've got the President, where appropriate, wearing masks. And so that's just a non-issue. The issue is basically, what are we going to be doing in terms of trying to deal with this pandemic? And I think that's where we keep our eye on the ball.
Well,
it's such a non-issue that the governor is suing the mayor. I mean, it's a huge issue now because he's using his position to sue the city of Atlanta with our money.
Yeah, and the president said what he said, at least one time.
Yeah, the governor's not suing the mayor because of masks.
All right, fair enough. Let's move on, Kathy. I know
the governor should have the last word, Russ. That's the bottom line, not a mayor.
That is the law. There's no question about it.
What happened to local control?
Well, they're going to work that out in court. Apparently, the mayor has said, let's talk about this in court. She's not cowed by the governor at all. So we are in very interesting times. Kathy, I do want to ask you about an important topic of public health. Governor Kemp has backed away from proposed changes in the Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare, here in Georgia. For one thing, the waiver drops the governor's plan to subsidize cheaper insurance coverage, and the state is not going to take control of almost $3 billion in federal subsidies. Now, all that sounds confusing, but talk about what this means for Georgians, especially during this pandemic.
Well, here's the deal. The governor's original plan to expand Medicaid cost about the same as full Medicaid expansion, which would have covered about 500,000 people low income without insurance. But his plan would only have covered about 50,000. He was trying to undermine the Affordable Care Act in a number of different ways, and the proposal he put forward to create this reinsurance plan, which would have paid off insurance companies for the biggest claims and try to keep costs down in the course of both the coronavirus and the expenses associated with that, as well as the fact that the federal government responded and said, "Yeah, we're not going to reimburse this. It's a plan that's against the rules that we have." So they knew they had to dial it back, and they also knew that the cost that they were going to get in their reinsurance plan was just simply not going to pencil out. I know that's really complicated, but I've been talking for a while that we need to do full Medicaid expansion. We would get $3 billion estimated, it's probably more now, in insurance repayments for a fraction of the cost of the investment, and provide people with critical insurance that they need. We just got a report back that we have another couple 100,000 people that are going to be losing their insurance as a result of their job losses. So that puts us up at about 700,000 people without insurance, and we're about second in the nation of people who are uninsured.
Right.
That's not good for the economy. That's not good for public health.
Janelle, I only have about 30 seconds in this segment, but given the pandemic and the vulnerability people are in, any second thoughts about expanding Medicaid in Georgia?
Not at all. If anything, we need to get people back to work in general, and just open the economy back up so that people can work, and then they can have jobs that will pay for their insurance, and we won't have to worry about that. But this is not a time to increase bills. All
right, Janelle, I appreciate you for keeping it short. Coming up, Governor Kemp decided this week to extend the deployment of 1,000 National Guard troops to keep the peace. We will discuss after this.
Join the discussion on the Georgia Gang Facebook page and watch past episodes on the Georgia Gang YouTube channel.
We come full circle to another disagreement between the governor and the mayor. Governor Kemp decided Monday to extend the presence of National Guard troops in Atlanta to protect property, including the state capitol and the governor's mansion. Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms calls it overkill, urging the governor to worry about the virus. So let's bring in the panel. Phil, I know this is something you've been thinking about.
Well, that's right. And again, Governor Kemp has an obligation to ensure the public safety of all Georgians, including those in our capital city. And why is he extending the 1,000 National Guardsmen? It's because, as I said last week, Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms has broken the Atlanta Police Department with no due process for officers involved in shooting incidents. The city council just the other day foolishly tried to enact these stupid reforms, including you can't shoot at a fleeing suspect or a terrorist. Even Mayor Bottoms thought that was crazy and had to veto that. And so you look at the looting and the devastation. If you drive around downtown Atlanta or in Buckhead with boarded up buildings, the police were handcuffed and couldn't respond. No wonder the governor has to do this.
Bobby, I gather you have a different take.
You know, look, it's obviously the governor's right to do this. He controls the National Guard. I think you saw the mayor, Keisha Lance Bottoms, at the beginning when he brought the National Guard out at the beginning of May and agreed with the decision to do that. At this point, she believes that the peace has resided, as the violence has resided. And in fact, I believe one of the National Guardsmen, one of the folks in charge, was quoted as saying that it was a peaceful week. If he wants to leave them there for another few days, I guess he's going to do that. But I think it's just important. It all goes back to trying to keep and pull this country together. I know we have different political parties, Phil, but I just feel like if we can start on one thing here, national health care, to ensure that we are able to take care of each other, that it can stem throughout society. And when you have division, this is what you get.
All right. The GBI.
How about starting with law and order? How about that?
Exactly.
Can I, hey, Russ, can I just make a comment?
Please, Kathy, go ahead. Kathy, you go ahead.
I just wanted to correct one thing Phil said. He said that the mayor vetoed the ordinance that the city council passed with some recommendations of changes to police activities. She actually vetoed it because it wasn't in the form of a resolution, and it's her belief that the ordinance format was improperly done, and that she would take those recommendations in the form of a resolution. So I don't know who's right in terms of the ordinance versus a resolution comment, but it wasn't as a result of what was in the ordinance.
All right. Let's talk about Paul Howard.
Well, can I respond, Russ? Can I respond to that real quick?
It's your program. Please feel free.
The mayor was also concerned, along with city attorneys, that some of those, not all, some of those violated state law and the Constitution. So she was worried about the constitutionality of, for example, shooting at fleeing criminals in vehicles.
All right, we'll leave that one there. Let's talk about Paul Howard for a minute.
Hence the procedural issue.
All right, fair enough.
I would love to.
Go ahead.
The GBI looking into whether Paul Howard issued illegal subpoenas in the Rayshard Brooks case because the grand jury, according to some, had been dismissed due to the coronavirus. The DA has a different take on that. State investigators, of course, had already been probing his use of a nonprofit to augment his salary with almost $200,000 worth of City of Atlanta money. Janelle, how much trouble do you think the DA is in his re-election bid?
I think he's in a lot of trouble, and I think most importantly, his seat is in trouble. The thing about it is that when we look at D.A. Howard, I can't believe how much he continues to contradict himself, from the whole taser situation to the schools and the teachers who are that were in trouble with the whole cheating scandal. I mean, he goes back and forth over and over and over again. It seems like in most cases, he's making decisions based on what's going to benefit him in that moment. And we have people's lives at stake. His seat is a very, very important seat, and he plays a very, very important role. And I just think that we need to really pay attention to what's happening right now and make sure that we really think about this when the time comes to remove him out of that seat, because this is really looking really bad on his end.
And Kathy, he has the important endorsement of the third place finisher, Christian Wise Smith.
Well, yeah, and that's raised some eyebrows, and Janelle just kind of touched on it briefly, because he has changed his position relative to folks that were involved in the school cheating scandal, and is attempting to kind of short circuit around their sentencing. And there's some speculation that it's a result of that endorsement. So I have to say, Janelle and I agree in this moment that he's not handling his current role very well, and he seems to be kind of blowing, with the political winds, and that's not what we need in a DA. And I'll just be the broken record that I am about the need for political leadership that's steady and thoughtful and doing the right thing because it's the right thing, not because it's the politically expedient thing. All
right, we'll leave it there. It's time for winners and losers when we come back.
Time now for the week's winners and losers.
All right, it is time for winners and losers. We have 3 minutes for this. And Bobby, why don't you take it away first?
All right, so the president's poll numbers are dipping, and that's having an impact right here in Georgia. So I see the losers this week as the folks who are trying to defend on the Republican Party their state house seats. This is going to ripple through the suburbs, and conversely, I see the winners as those Democrats who are running for those same state house seats. I think you're going to see a lot of seats flip in November if this continues. Polls are a snapshot of this moment in time, but if this were the moment in time, I think there'd be a very good chance that the Georgia State House would flip today.
All right, Phil, what do you have for us?
Well, my winner is President Trump, who came to Atlanta just the other day to the UPS hub, and he announced some very, very significant reforms when it comes to expediting projects in terms of infrastructure and transportation. And he also reminded everyone that he's done full funding in his administration, unlike the Obama-Biden administration, for our very vital Port of Savannah. So I would hope most people would be in favor of expediting and trimming regulations, onerous regulations, so we can get projects like the I-75 truck lane corridor done a lot quicker. He's cutting from 7 years to 2 years to all of these infrastructure projects. It's way overdue.
All right. Kathy, you.
I want to just give condolences to the family of Reverend C.T. Vivian. He passed away this past week. He was really, another one of those leaders for which Atlanta can be proud in the civil rights movement. He received the Presidential Medal of Freedom from President Obama, and he's a personal hero of mine, so we'll miss him a lot. Also, winner David Edwards, leaving as CEO of purpose-built communities. He's been there for 5 years leading the charge, and they've made incredible contribution to Atlanta and around the country and communities in need. And I just want to give a reminder to everybody, it's time to apply for your absentee ballot for the August 11th runoff elections. Go ahead and do it, and if you're over 65, you can check a box that will have one for the fall automatically sent to you.
All right, thank you, Kathy. And Janelle, you get the last word.
Absolutely. So my winner is Commissioner Bob Ott with Cobb County. I want to make sure I say this correctly, but he will be bringing forward a list of proposed recipients for grant funds and financial aid, and these are businesses who have not received any other financial aid or any other formal aid due to the impact on COVID-19. This is about 28% of the first batch of grant recipients in the county, and there's going to be certainly more to follow. And I would also like to echo Kathy in sending my condolences as well to the family of Reverend C.T. Vivian. I'm eternally grateful for his life and for everything that he has fought for, as well as echo Phil in supporting the president and for coming to Georgia and rolling out his infrastructure plan and allowing me the opportunity to share the stage with him as well.
Well, thanks to all of you for a spirited exchange today. Kathy Woolard, Janelle King, Phil Kent, and Bobby Capel. That is it for us today. We do thank you for watching. Lori will be back next week. Fox News Sunday is next here on Fox 5. Have a great day.